So, this is a bit of a spoiler for future events that are going to be happening on the channel, but just a heads up, guys, longer videos, yeah, they're going to be going away. And by longer, I mean longer.
Hour and a half long megasodes and gigantic fuck-off sized retrospectives. Yeah, GDR3 is going to be the last of those kind of videos. I may as well give you a heads up right now. They just take way too long to make, and frankly, they've gotten a bit self-indulgent. I just want to get back to talking about smaller topics.
I mean, we'll still be doing stuff like retrospectives and episodes on single albums and stuff, but like, I'm paring the format down to something way more easily digestible. Like 20 to 30 minutes, 40 minutes if it's a super duper special topic, but guys, for my sake and yours, I just feel like it's better for the channel. I want to focus on putting out smaller videos way more often. I want to bring back a lot of the smaller shows that you guys really liked from last year. Stuff like bad album covers, I love and hate this song. Hell, I'd even want to take a crack at the unscripted vids again. Guys, there's a lot of other stuff I want to do, and the big videos are getting in the way of that. So, spoiler alert, those are going away in a very big way. And I also want to bring in a slew of new shows, some new ideas, and some other stuff that you guys have been asking me to tackle, and that I've wanted to tackle for a long time, but the longer vids just got in the way of that. All these new changes were actually something I was planning on announcing after GDR3, but as it often does, circumstances kind of changed things.
On October 17th, 2017, Gord Downey, celebrated Canadian musician and lead singer of the Tragically Hip, lost his battle against brain cancer and passed away at the all too young age of 53. As I've mentioned in previous videos, the Tragically Hip is one of my favorite bands of all time.
And god damn it, even though we all saw it coming, that didn't stop it from hurting any less. Fuck, I still miss him. And, you know, the very first thing that happened after Gord died was a ton of people hitting me up and saying, Crash, I know you're a big hip guy. Where do I start with this band? I want to start listening to this band, but I don't know where to even get into. And given that the Hip was such a big band that never fucking ever got their real due, you know, we're gonna mix up the plan a little bit and debut one of the new shows I was planning on debuting next year a little early. Because A, I feel like a lot of people could use it right now, and B, this is a band that really deserves the special treatment. Guys, welcome to the first episode of How to Get Into.
In this new series, we'll be tackling bands' entire discographies to help newbies or people interested in digging deeper, kind of a rough guide into where they should go next, what to listen to first, where to go once you're hooked, and giving some guidance as to what albums maybe should be left until you're a hardcore fan, or just avoid it altogether. Think of it like a roadmap of a band's entire musical catalog.
Or in this case, a goddamn treasure map. God, this was a hard list to make, but still a really fun one, because the Hip have so many great albums, and not a lot of stuff we have to poo-poo on, so this is an excellent place to start.
But please, just keep in mind that this guide is based, as always, solely on my own opinion, and not much else. Your mileage definitely may vary when it comes to the albums we discuss in these videos, but hey, for those of you who just have no bloody idea where to start, I mean, I feel ya, I'm here to help. The Hip's catalog is big, daunting, and it can be really hard to penetrate if you don't know specifically where to start digging.
But I'm happy to help you get started. Let's start out with the must-hear albums.
So when Gord passed and people would inevitably ask me what albums they should start off with to get into this band, without even blinking, the first two albums I always recommend are Fully Completely and Phantom Power. The Hip took a lot of their biggest, boldest, and best strides in the 90s. If a Hip album has a release date with a 199 in front of it, chances are you're in for a very good time. And nothing signifies this more than 1992's Fully Completely and 1998's Phantom Power. There weren't a ton of bands in the 90s that were able to survive the 90s, if you really think about it, if only because it was such a tumultuous, ever-shifting musical landscape. It was hard for any band to stay relevant for long in that period, but not only did the Hip release their best stuff during this time, they would go on to prove that they had the staying power for pretty much any decade. Fully Completely is an early 90s album too. It has a lot of strength, power, aggression, bravado. I swear to God, this is the best album of the early 90s you probably haven't gotten around to spinning yet.
Unless you happen to be Canadian, of course, then most of you are probably looking at the rest of us like, hell yeah, where have you all been?
This thing is a fucking riot. It blows the hinges off the door with one of the best 1-2-3 punches in 90s rock history, with Courage for Hugh McLennan, Looking for a Place to Happen, and At the 100th Meridian just punches you right in the face from the get-go. And it slows down smoothly and elegantly with tracks like the stunning Pigeon Camera, the playful and fun Will Go Too, and the sheer acoustic brilliance of Wheat Kings. And it continues the blistering assault with the stampeding tempo of Lionized and the wherewithal, the swanky humble bragging of 50 Mission Cap, the cerebral and head-trippy crescendoing of Locked in the Trunk of a Car, and the absolute thundering hammer strike of a title track. This album has a near perfect flow to it. Its melodies are instantly infectious, and this is one of the first albums where we really see Gord's strengths as a songwriter. Gord was always more of a storyteller than a straight-up lyricist. He had much more interest in draping his messages in a narrative and setting up a scene. He was more staging a play than preaching from a pulpit with his lyrical style. And this album has some wonderful, insightful, and stunningly poetic stories to tell. This album is a huge winner in my book, arguably their best ever.
But then again, so is Phantom Power.
This outing from 1998 again drove the hammer home that the Hip was a band that could survive in any period. By 1998, you gotta remember, a lot of bands from the early 90s were either broken up or had been going through some of the rougher patches in their career. The Hip, meanwhile, scored another home run with this 50 minutes of sheer brilliance, the gorgeous sway and enjoyable playfulness of Something On, the foot-tappingly danceable Save the Planet, and its weird flute fucking abouts. The deceptively bouncy and cheery fireworks, the crunchy, gnashing vibes of Vapor Trails, and that mammoth, cascading closing track, Emperor Penguin. Look, I realize that's probably not the best name for an album closer, but just listen to the song. You'll shut the fuck up about that right quick. It kicks ass. And it's not just the high energy stuff that works here. In fact, in my opinion, this album shines brightest when it slows the hell down and mellows out. The soothing vibes and acoustic simplicity of Thompson Girl make it one of those tracks you'll instantly want to dig up tablature for. This is a great one for open mics and the like, so keep that in the back of your mind if you're a musician. The searing ennui and sadness ruminating throughout the rules is just heartbreaking and beautifully sad, and an excellent example of Paul Langlois' unique brand of backing vocal harmonies, and not to mention the deceptively quiet and humble Escape is at Hand for the Travelin man. It starts out so slow and quiet, but just keeps swelling and swelling and swelling and swelling, and until the end it's an absolute tidal wave crashing in all around you.
This album is so goddamn wonderful. One of the best examples of what Canadian music has to offer. It's a real shame it opens with fucking poets. Oh, get off my dick! I hate that song. Ugh.
Ugh, look, some people will defend this song like crazy. Hell, it's probably one of the songs the band is best known for in some circles, but it's not a personal favorite. Really, it's just a terrible opener for this album. It's too goofy and silly, at least compared to everything else on this album. It feels so out of place, and it's the very first thing you hear. It gives off the wrong impression. Honestly, I recommend skipping this song the first few times you listen to this album. Start with Something On. That makes a much better opening track. Come back to this one a little later.
But man, out of all the brilliant gems on this album, and this album has a lot of brilliant gems on it, nothing even comes close to a little song called Bobcaygeon.
Guys, this is not only my favorite Hip song, this might be my favorite song ever out of, like, all of them. Yes, we will get into that someday, but in short, this is one of the most beautiful ballads to have ever been written in rock. It's aching, it's soaring, it's sad and happy and yearning and just... Jesus Christ, if you listen to absolutely nothing else of this band, at least check this song out. If I start gushing about it now, I'll probably never stop talking about it, so for now, just trust me, this album is worth checking out if only for this song alone. If you do nothing else, dig up the video for this track and thank me later. It's a sheer miracle the band was able to release 2 albums so stunning just within 6 years of each other. But man, these records are just a testament to the beautiful soundscapes the 90s were able to produce, and they are glowing gems in the crown of Canadian music. A scene that just doesn't get the observance it deserves, frankly. Seriously, y'all are missing out. Y'all don't even know how much you're missing out.
Man, I could talk about both of these albums for just hours and hours. But that's a trend I'm trying to buck, so I'll just say that if you do nothing else as a result of this video, please just dig up those 2 and just give them a spin. Believe me, you will have not wasted your time. They're wonderful. But the thing is, even if you just insist on not starting there, you don't necessarily have to, because the Hip have so many other just perfect albums. A great example of one, their second album, Road Apples.
I mean, look at this thing. This album has Sophomore Slump written all over it, doesn't it? Goofy looking album cover and a title that's literally a euphemism for shit. Well, joke's on you, this was one of the best things they ever made, and it was their second full go-around. But man, on this album, these guys proved that they had a lot more going for them than just groovy jukebox jams. This was the album where they really started to show their true face and branch out a little bit from the more straightforward sound of their debut. Don't worry, we'll get around to that. Cordelia is a brilliant little chest-pounding track that's littered with all kinds of Shakespeare references.
My kind of track.
Three Pistols is an absolute rager with a metric fuck ton of force and punch to it. That also happens to be about an early 20th century painter named Tom Thompson.
Again, my kind of track.
And stuff like Little Bones and Twist My Arm show that the band can still do all this while maintaining that groove-laden boogie-woogie they were so good at in their earliest periods. It was a great album to help expand their fan base's idea of what they could be and the potential they possessed, and how they could possibly grow into something much, much more than just a fun little jammy band to drop a loony into the jukebox for while playing pool at the bar. But like Phantom Power, this album really shows its best moments when it slows the hell down and makes us chill out. This album might have two of their better slow songs. I mean, at least the ones that aren't named after obscure Ontario towns, from their entire catalog. Long Time Running is an excellent, remorseful, slow, bluesy number. An excellent breakup song to just turn on in the dark and bawl your eyes out over. And then there's Fiddler's Green, a song about losing a child.
Oh, holy God, this song is just straight up heart-destroying. I almost feel like I should have issued a non-ironic trigger warning. Just, man, if you're not ready for it, this song will make you burst into tears. It's so sad, but so fucking amazing too.
And again, this is another song that just sounds terrific on a bare-ass acoustic and nothing else. I love this song so much, I even played it during my 10K stream, and oh shit, the lag on that thing really was pretty bad. Oh, I'm sorry guys. But yeah, Road Apples, an absolute knockout. This would have been a great achievement for any band at any period in their career, but given that this was only their second time up to bat, it showed us that these guys genuinely had a lot more interesting stuff going on under the hood, and that we'd probably be hearing great things from them for a very long time.
And sure enough, we did, because in 2002, 11 years later, we got their fourth must-hear album, In Violet Light.
And again, this is an album that has an exquisite opening 1-2-3 punch with Are You Ready, Use It Up, and The Darkest One.
Oh my god, The Darkest One is so good!
A huge, grandiose pair of closing tracks in The Dire Wolf and The Dark Canuck.
Oh, Dark Canuck is so good too! Oh my god, shit!
And it's peppered with all kinds of wonderful goodness all the way through. Silver Jet is one of my favorite up-tempo hip songs. It's fun and jammy and just the teensiest bit goofy and carefree. I don't know, this song is basically Poets done right.
I don't like poets, and no amount of shouting from you is going to change that.
And this album, again, absolutely kills it with its slower jams. Leave is a song that starts slow, but again, crescendos into something so much more powerful by the end. The Hip are really good at writing songs like that, as you'll soon discover. Throwing Off Glass is a beautiful appeal for the goodness of mankind and the value of our existence.
And guys, it's a good life if you don't weaken. Holy shit, this song is amazing. This might be my second favorite Hip song. It's just, these guys' slow game is just 100% fucking stonkers. Just, fuck, how is a band this good at writing slow songs?
The glittery guitar work, the subtle, nuanced drumming, that explosive dun-dun into the chorus, and again, Paul is providing some wonderful backup melodies here. This is one of the Hip's most atmospheric tracks, and Jesus Christ, they could even do that and make it look like it was the easiest thing in the world. And Gord's lyrics, you know, this song can be hard to interpret, and I think it's going to be one of those tracks that means something different to everyone. But those were the type of lyrics that Gord was really good at writing. He knew how to write a song that could mean a million things to a million different people in a million different ways. Just another spellbinding must-hear track. This and Bobcaygeon, and I think you will quickly become addicted to the Hip.
Oh, guys, with a catalog this fucking good, it's so hard to recommend a place to start, but man, you could go with any of those 4 albums, I think, and be perfectly okay. Because, man, those are the albums you just have to experience. If you're going to touch anything in the Hip's catalog, it needs to be one of those 4 albums. Like, you're not going to go too wrong with any of those, in my opinion, of course. But even then, if you insist on just not starting with any of those, you can easily just hit up their best of collection. It's great too.
I know people like to poo-poo greatest hits albums, but hey, they can be a very useful tool for getting into groups you just don't know shit from dick about, and the Hips is a terrific place to go to get kind of the best and brightest spots across most of their career. Your Favorites has 2 previously unreleased songs, the goof-tastic No Threats and the beautiful slow jam The New Maybe, both of which are superb. My only warning with their greatest hits collection is that it's long, and I mean long too. 37 tracks across 2 albums. But look, if you want a taste of anything and everything, it's a perfectly good place to start.
Yeah, don't let snobby shitheads or pretentious gatekeepers give you any BS for taking the easy way and listening to a greatest hits album. Trust me, The Hip is one of those bands where it's totally fine to do that, especially given how good the Best Of collection is. It's just that, yeah, even I wouldn't say that is taking the easy way out when it comes to The Hip, if only because there's still so much stuff to sift through. And so much of it's so great. Like, again, how is a band this good? How?
This segment will cover the places you'll probably want to go next after you've had that first taste. And with this band, believe me, there are plenty of places to go once you've explored the very best they have to offer. And you know what? Even then, it's not a huge drop-off from their best. I mean, The Hip, man, they were anything if not consistently amazing. Take Trouble in the Hen House, their fifth album from 1996. I feel like most Hip fans probably would have actually put this under the must-hear category, maybe instead of like Road Apples or In Violet Light. This is a fan favorite album, though it's easy to see why. Gift Shop may be one of their best opening numbers ever, a swinging, swaying, woozy little number that doesn't spare on the explosive guitar work. Ahead by a Century is maybe one of their most celebrated love songs. Again, its simple construction and blissful sound on an acoustic guitar makes it a must-use for your open mic repertoire. And other songs like 700 Foot Ceiling and its awesome dancey little groove, and Butts Wigglin', another one of their really good, kinda silly tracks. Though, if you have a keen ear, something about it might sound a little familiar to you.
In my opinion, the drug is ready.
Dr. Cooper, is it ready or not?
In my opinion, the drug is ready.
Yep, this song was originally meant to be featured on the Kids in the Hall Brain Candy. For some reason it was left off the original soundtrack, though. I don't think we have a reason why. Real shame, this is a great song. I really dig this one. Oh man, the Kids in the Hall, that's another fucking excellent thing that more people should know about, but nah, y'all are just like, whoa, Canada, Beavers, hockey, Nickelback, politeness. What's that about, eh? Man, y'all are missing out. Y'all are missing out on so goddamn much, I can't even... Canada gets a bad rap, man. They really do.
Trouble at the Hen House has some of their best single cuts, and it's a killer album to check out. But it has a few small issues. By Apartment Song, the album kinda loses its steam, and this is honestly one of the Hip's goofier albums. I mean, the band always had a sense of humor about themselves, but here, it's really fullest on display, and I just don't think it's gonna be everyone's thing. The big hitters on this album are totally worth it, but it isn't flawless. It's still a great album to dig into if anything from it sounds like it's up your alley. The same could generally be said for 1994's follow-up to Fully Completely, Day for Night. Again, the killer songs on this album kill so goddamn hard. Grace 2 is another amazing crescendoing song. So Hard Done By is another great grungy, bluesy track. Scared is another heart-shattering breakup song. And Nautical Disaster? Must hear for any potential songwriters. Seriously, it's a song without a chorus or even a main hook that discusses obscure historical events and dreamscape surrealism and is one of the most obtuse, fucking heady, fucking weirdo, impenetrable tracks they ever wrote. And it's still an absolute banger. It's one of their best bangers. It's insane. Listening to this song will teach you how to broaden your horizons as a songwriter. Another highlight in a career already overstuffed with highlights.
But the album as a whole, it might not be everyone's thing. Again, it's a decent album. It's got plenty of amazing tracks on it, but it also has its less interesting moments. Hell, when I listen to this thing, I usually find myself skipping past the less celebrated songs on it. Look, if you put this thing on and have to end up hitting that old skip button a good 4 or 5 times, I wouldn't necessarily blame you here. But again, lots of good stuff to find on this album. Hell, who knows, you might love it. It's worth digging into.
Though the same could be said for the album that, weirdly enough, actually got me into the hip personally, 2000's Music at Work. Again, this album is instantly dated, if only for the title alone, but man, this thing has some bright spots on it that cannot be ignored. The infectiously chill vibes of Lake Fever and Stay, the delicious guitar melodies of Completionist, the crunch and grit of The Bastard and Freak Turbulence. Look, all of it is divine.
But man, oh man, you really want to get fascinated by this band? You listen to and dig up the music video for the song My Music at Work.
I've already touched a wee bit on how much I love this song and video, but man, it's still really goddamn good. This is the Hip at their most charming and their most funny. The song almost feels like the entirety of Trouble at the Hen House squeezed into a single track, and the video just... God damn it, this alone makes the album worth spinning. Seriously, I love this goddamn song.
Okay, Bobcaygeon, It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken, and My Music at Work. There. If that 1, 2, 3 punch doesn't get you into the hip, I really don't know what fucking will.
But be warned, while this album does have a lot of good tracks on it, it also has a lot of...
This is Tiger the Lion. Give me the knuckles of Frisco.
experimental stuff? Honestly, I'm kind of amazed this was the album that got me into the hip, because it's probably one of their most quizzical, one of their most far out there. This is one of those albums where the band doesn't quite sound like themselves, but overall, its pros far outweigh its cons. Another great one to check out.
But while that's an album that could potentially scare off newbies, their debut, Up to Here, on the other hand, that's kind of an entirely different story. This album kicks a lot of ass.
Oh man, this one is so good. Yeah, their second album may be masterclass, but their debut was certainly no slouch. This thing just reeks with early 90s charm. This album is all about the boogie. Blow it high dough, New Orleans is sinking, boots or hearts, every time you go, when the weight comes down, opiated. All of it is just a booty-shaking good time. Stuff that sounds great blaring out of a rusty old jukebox, you know? And even 38 years old helps show us the awesome slow game these guys had, and it showcases Gord's early talents as a storyteller. It's just an incredible album, honest to God. I was very, very tempted to put this on the must-hear section.
So why didn't I then? It's weird. This album, as great as it is, it's also super duper dated.
When I said this thing reeks of early 90s, I bloody well meant it. The production, the style, the song crafting, it's all very Gin Blossoms-y, Sister Hazel-y, Toad the Wet Sprocket-y. It's the kind of thing VH1 would have been all over in the 90s. But here's the best part about that. Even though this album sounds 90s as all hell, it was made in 1989. These guys were making that sound way before it had even become popular, and they kicked ass at it too. You also have to take into account this was between that very brief period between the super late 80s and early 90s, basically that super small window between when hair metal finally died and Nirvana reinvented rock. That small area of about 2-3-ish years, that teeny tiny little window that most of us tend to forget, was a fucking wasteland for nearly every genre of music, particularly rock. Oh my god, you think rock is underappreciated now? Check and see what was charting back in 1990 and weep. These guys, though, they were birthed from that wretched hellscape, and they were still able to make music that was insanely fucking brilliant.
Even when this band was dated, they were still ahead of their time. Guys, this band is a fucking miracle.
And again, as good as this album is, it's also kinda like music at work, in that the band doesn't quite sound like themselves here. Again, nothing else they did would ever really sound like this, so it might give you a first bad impression if this is the very first thing you tackle. But man, even if you aren't acclimatized, this still has some fucking good stuff on it. It's the Hip at their most simple, their most underdeveloped, their most young and nubile. But it's an album that shows us that even at their core, even at their most simplistic, they were a solid rock group and a true musical force to be reckoned with.
Basically, when it comes to the Hip, this section in particular is fairly easy to talk about. I'll put it this way. Anything from In Between Evolution forward is a little...
I mean, In Between Evolution, it's another okay album, it's another big fan favorite, but it doesn't vibe as hard with me than it does most other Hip fans for whatever reason. Don't get me wrong, it still has plenty of ragers. Vaccination Scar, Summer's Killing Us, As Makeshift As We Are, all pretty decent songs you'll probably like, but I don't know, I tend to run out of steam pretty quickly when it comes to this one.
Hell, the best song on this album, to me at least, is actually probably the goofiest one. Gus, the polar bear from Central Park. It's a song about a real-life polar bear who apparently had schizophrenia and was very awkward and difficult to handle, and God, only the Hip could take a topic that strange and turn it into something fairly compelling. Again, this band is a fucking miracle, people.
The same kinda goes for their two Bob Rock produced albums, World Container and We Are the Same. For one thing, yes, it's that Bob Rock, so don't say I didn't warn you. But again, the big hitters on these albums are totally worth checking out. You're Not the Ocean, The Lonely End of the Rink, The Kids Don't Get It, Last Night I Dreamed You Didn't Love Me from World Container, and from We Are the Same, The Last Recluse, Coffee Girl, Now the Struggle Has a Name, The Depression Suites, and Love is a First are all songs that I'd say are worth your time. But like with a lot of later era Hip, the albums, they just run out of steam in several places, you know?
I mean, that's the thing with the Hip's catalog. There isn't like a Saint Anger or a Virtual 11 we can all point to and cringe at. When it comes to Hip albums, they're either fucking spellbinding or...
Your mileage is definitely gonna vary on the Bob Rock albums. To be honest, I actually rather dig them. Hell, I was tempted to put them on the Next Steps list, honestly, but I also understand that the production is very Bob Rocky, and to some people, they're just not gonna dig it. And again, these albums might give off the wrong impression if you start too early with them. Even then, I wouldn't say any of these albums are bad. I would just say maybe flawed in places. Honestly, the band only really starts to run out of gumption when we start to hit the 2010s, with 2012s now for Plan A specifically. Again, it's an album that has some must-listen tunes on it: At Transformation, Man Machine Poem, Streets Ahead, and the absolutely amazing ballads We Want to Be It, Now for Plan A, and About This Map. Man, with songs like that, it makes me not want to be too hard on this thing, but when this album runs out of steam, it really runs out of steam. Now for Plan A can be extremely hit or miss.
Actually, if you're feeling really adventurous and want to do some real deep digging, this might be cheating a little bit, but if you really want to find some uncovered gems, check out Gord's solo catalog. There's lots of good stuff there, too.
Specifically, you've gotta hear Coke Machine Glow. Oh man, this album is so gorgeous and humble, and once you hear a song like Chancellor, I promise you'll be glad you made the dive. Some of Gord's other solo work is really good too, but Coke Machine Glow is really just that good. You've gotta at least give it a chance. So goddamn good. Again, if you just have to have more hip in your life, to the point where even the hip themselves aren't enough, Gordo's solo work is certainly not gonna do you wrong.
Well, I'd say that pretty much covers everything. Well, everything except...
Thankfully for the hip, this will be a very short segment because out of their vast, varied, and extremely prolific career, they never really struck out too often. The hip is just one of those bands that could and often did do anything. But the only two albums I'd say you can comfortably miss are, ironically enough, both their earliest and latest efforts. The earliest self-titled EP from 1987, you can skip it. I mean, you thought the band didn't sound like themselves on Up to Here? Well, multiply that by like 3 and you have the self-titled EP. But again, it's not entirely fair to judge the band too harshly for that. This was their very first outing. Of course they didn't sound like themselves yet, they weren't themselves yet. Some people really like songs like Highway Girl or Last American Accent. Again, it's not like atrociously offensive or anything, but man, compared to the stuff we would get in the future, only the hardest of the hardcore hip fans need apply for this one. Same, unfortunately, kind of goes for the very last album they did, Man Machine Poem. I've already had the chance to talk about this one a little bit last year when I reviewed it, and really, I don't have much more to say here than I did there. If anything, I may have been a little too nice to that album. It's very meandering, very slow. It never seems to build up the momentum it needs to, and it feels tired, extremely tired. Tired as fuck, you could say. Hey, What Blue and In a World Possessed by the Human Mind are pretty okay tracks, but most of what's on this album, again, just pales in comparison to what they've done on previous outings. This one felt like the hip was, again, being more experimental and trying to see what they could get away with, like they often do with their work. But this is one of the few times it just really didn't work out for them. Again, only spin this if you're feeling very brave.
But man, like I said in my initial review of that album, the hip on their worst day were better than a lot of bands could ever dream of being. And man, the fact that a band and a catalog this illustrious, this multifaceted, this super concentrated kick-ass never got any real love outside of Canada? That is a fucking crime. The hip may be Canada's band, but really, that's only because the rest of the world just never gave them the fair shake they truly deserved. You owe it to yourself to see what you've been missing out on, and I hope I've been able to help out in at least some small way here. Like I said, your mileage is bound to vary with some of the albums we've talked about here, and again, at the end of the day, it's just my opinion, but if I've even helped you get started listening to the hip, then you know what, I'm happy. And you know what, you'll make up your own mind as you listen to the hip, and man, it's gonna be hard to find something in a catalog this wonderful that you don't absolutely love. If only just a song or two. You really, really, really need to get in on Canada's best kept secret. But again, that's just my opinion. And, well, I'm Crash Thompson. And remember, the only opinion that really matters is your own. Cheers.